Welcome, everyone. This is a call called Strategies for Building a Local Solidarity Economy, hosted by Cooperation New Orleans and Beloved Community Incubator in DC. My name is Shano Foylan. I'm with Cooperation New Orleans, formerly lived in DC, and excited to be kind of the moderator or MC for our call today. We just got to hear some songs, Capitalist Blues by Layla McCalla, a local New Orleans artist, and Solidarity Economy by Mad Lines, if you're interested in checking those out. So for our call today, and Susan, you can take the visual down, I think. Our call today is really to talk about a collaboration that we're doing between our two organizations. Cooperation New Orleans and Beloved Community Incubator are both part of the Seed Commons network, and so we're both locally based community loan funds. And we also both have an orientation toward movement building and organizing cooperatively and building a solidarity economy in our cities. And so we're excited to kind of build a relationship between our two organizations. And we'll be talking about a collaboration that we're trying out this summer with an organizer exchange and a participatory action research project. So the flow of the call, I'll in a few minutes pass it over to Bianca at BCI to introduce the project and talk about what BCI is really holding for this work. We'll then have a panel with Askalu and Toya talking about this project and their work in the respective cities. And then we'll invite you all to this is a 1-hour call over lunch. So we're inviting folks we'll move through things pretty quickly, but inviting you to put questions or comments in the chat. And we'll have Susan and Jeff will be monitoring the chat and answering questions as they come up. And we may have time at the end of the panel to have a little discussion, possibly. We are recording this call for the folks in our communities and supporters that aren't able to be here today at this time. So if you'd like to stay off camera, that's totally fine. But if you are able to come on camera, we'd love to see your faces as well. And one of the purposes of this call is that we are fundraising to support this project. All of those funds will be funneled through Beloved Community Incubator. And so the link for that will be in the chat. And we'll talk a little more about the fundraising further on. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Bianca to talk about the project.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Bianca Vasquez, she, her pronouns. I'm the program director at Beloved Community Incubator here in DC. So my job is to talk a little bit about what is participatory action research and what is this exchange going to look like before you hear from our lovely organizers. So I have come to really love participatory action research, which has a big name, but really means that it's the community that's producing knowledge about itself. So it means we as community members are listening to our communities and then producing knowledge about our community. And it's explicitly for power building. So what that's going to look like this year or this summer is in May, June, July. Over this summer, we're having 500 conversations across our region, which is DC, and then the Maryland suburbs and Virginia suburbs that are close. We'll be having those conversations in 3 ways. So one-to-one conversations, house meetings, and then these like lay of the land analysis, where we collectively pool our knowledge with other leaders to say, okay, this is how capitalism is functioning in our region. What are the opportunities? What are the cracks to say we can interrupt here or we can intervene here to build something that is democratically or community owned? So who are we going to have these conversations with? We're going to talk to people who currently own businesses who might be interested in selling their businesses to retire. We're going to talk to people who want to work in or are already working in care economy. So senior care, elder care, child care, house cleaning, and also folks who are connected to sort of just transition work. So how do we move away from the extractive economy in terms of like fossil fuels? So that might mean folks working in solar or green roofs or, any number of other interventions around just transition. We'll also be listening to current worker owners, so folks who currently work in democratic workplaces, as well as people who are sort of interested in starting businesses. And so you might ask, like, well, what are you going to do with all of these conversations? What are we going to do at the end? The idea is that we're going to come out of this exchange with a regional agenda, and one that is both like practical and economic. So we want to come out with what's a collective economic project that worker owners can take on together. What are maybe legislative campaigns that we could take on, as well as guiding and shaping our work over the next 3 years. And I want to quickly talk about, like, okay, amazing that BCI is doing this. Why did we decide to take this on together? So what does Cooperation NOLA have to do with this project, and why are we doing it together? I think one of the things is we started talking about this after we were both of our organizations were invited onto a panel and to write an article together for Nonprofit Quarterly, where they pulled organizers from Buffalo, DC, New Orleans, LA to talk about, hey, what does it look like in your specific context to be building the regional solidarity economy? And as Felix, our other co-director, and Maya from Cooperation New Orleans were talking, I think it really inspired us, and the whole webinar series inspired us to say, like, okay, each of us is working in a more hyper-local way, but we're part of this bigger movement around fundamentally shifting how our economy works and who benefits from the economy. And so our organizations, like Sean said, are both members of the Seed Commons Network, so both working to organize capital. We're both explicit about racial justice and power building. And I think there was all these ways in which we wanted to learn from one another about the kind of organizing that we're doing, but learn in an experiential way, like learn on the ground, learn by doing field together. And we really want to build the ties between our organizations because we are doing our work hyper locally. But I think for me, it's always inspiring to get present to, like, what we're doing in DC, what's happening in New Orleans, what's happening in Buffalo or LA is part of this large interconnected movement across the country. So that's what I have to share with y'all about the what and the why. And I'll pass it back to Sean.
Thanks so much, Bianca. Great to hear that recap. And I think it'd be great if we could share the Nonprofit Quarterly series and video in the chat, which I think Susan's on. So I'm going to bring us over to our panel. And what we'll do is basically have 3 rounds of just offering a question and getting to hear from both of them about themselves, about the work, and in this way get to kind of hear the synergies and comparisons between our 2 local ecosystems that we're building, and how this project is part of building our local solidarity economies. So the first question for Toya and Askalu is to introduce yourself. What's your role in the Participatory Action project and your relationship to either your own organization and or Cooperation New Orleans and Beloved Community Incubator? And why are you interested? What brings you to this work? Why are you interested in building a local solidarity economy? I think I'll pass it to Askalu first, and then Toya can go next. And I'll kind of flag a few minutes once a few minutes is up so that we can move on to the next person. So, and thank you for spotlighting whoever's doing that. All right, over to you, Askalu.
All right, thank you. Hello all, my name is Askalu Haftom. I live here in the DMV area in Virginia. I am excited to be in this panel to participate for the fundraising. I am from the Beloved Community Incubators. I've been working with the groups. So my role in BCI means Beloved Community Incubator is that to bring awareness to our community who are not knowing what is the benefit of standing up by ourselves or getting in our feet to be free of laboring or get our our economy to get better. So I am participating because to let know our communities there is opportunity to do it with each other by organizing with those non-profit organizations, and then we can do it with co-ops by getting lands or not only getting land and monies, but there is a lot of knowledge between our community and those non-profit organizations. So I'm organizing this. The organization to work with our community, and then I am finding people who can tell us what is going on in their lives or what do they want to do in the futures. So my role is to get people and then find out how can we help our community to stand up in their feet. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Eskalu. And we'll pass it over to Toya.
Good, I guess it's afternoon for some of y'all. My name Toya. I'm born and raised in New Orleans, Katrina survivor. And I currently sit on the steering committee with Cooperation New Orleans, but also run the organization called Project Hustle. For me, there's deep alignment with the two organizations, but specifically with Cooperation New Orleans, I'm working to build the solidarity economy here in New Orleans. And one of the roles I play is being involved in the education area of the work. I helped to build our Black Liberation Co-op Academy curriculum and did some facilitation of that curriculum. And we're currently in the process of translating that curriculum into video so that we can share some of those learnings on social media with folks, and however we be able to collaborate with the comms team to be able to like push those videos and kind of share a little bit of education with folks. Project Hustle is an organization that I was about to say gave birth to, but I guess I gave birth to in 2020. After about 9 years of doing work in the field of economic justice, so doing workers' rights organizing, like community-based workers' rights organizing, that was a little bit different from union organizing, but closely related to union organizing. It was workers' rights, but we also saw ourselves in the housing rights area and also in the decriminalization of Blackness in particular. And I did that work with an organization called Stand with Dignity. That was a worker center organization here in New Orleans. I also worked in the movement for Black Lives, particularly as a founding member of Black Youth Project 100 here in New Orleans. And Southerners on the Ground, to kind of just giving way of like some of the background work that I've done and how I've built my lens to do this work, which I consider to be a Black queer hood feminist lens. I'm personally excited to continue to build with community, to continue to talk to folks, to continue to translate some of the language around how do we build better economies, and not just translate the language that lives in our world, but like build with people and make space for people to see that some of the things that we already are doing is a part of the solidarity economy, and how do we do the work to kind of strengthen that, and also learn from community. What are the needs we have, right? What are the things that's missing, keeping us from being a part of and building intentional solidarity economies that help us grow and thrive within our communities? I think that answered all the questions.
Great, thank you. All right, Askalu, I think I'll pass it back to you if you're there.
Yes, I'm here.
Great. And I'm wondering if it would be okay to ask you, Askalu, to speak a little bit about your community. I know you mentioned it, and I believe you're part of another organization, African Communities Together. And I know that, yeah, there's a very different immigrant communities and African immigrant communities in the DC area, and wondering if you could speak a little bit about your community and how you got involved in this work.
Oh, sure. Thank you. The first time I find out about African Community Together is during COVID. They were giving people giant card that to participate in shoppings. Most of our community works like we call them essential workers that works in a hotel, in different areas that we don't have that much people in professional ways. There we work. So they were helping people by giving giant cards. So I was part of that organizations by giving people the cards, writing names. Voluntary, I was working because people was afraid to go out and then participate that things to give even the card because everybody being locked down. So I was just volunteering for African community by giving the card. And then after that, I found out they are doing a lot of works for the community, for African community. One of them is there is in our area in Virginia, there is Alexandria cities. They have a lot of problems with apartment. One of the apartment calls Southern Towers. There is a lot of migrants who are living over there, but in a COVID area, they sold it to another pupils. So they start harassing people to leave the building or they're raising the rents. So African community was working with those pupils who are the tenants and then helping them to cover. At that time, there is no way that they can go anywhere. So I was participating in there and then I was start involving in the community because as an immigrant, I was here as asylum seekers, and then I see how it works, and then I pass through a lot of things. So I start working with them. We are doing a lot of things, not only for Alexandria area residents, but the same thing we do. We help people to get their papers, immigration papers, and legal action if they have some, like starting from by getting tickets from police. They get panicked and then they don't know how to do. So we participate in different ways. So I love helping my community, and then that's how I get to know Felice and Jeff. So I'm working. Yes.
Thank you for sharing that. And I think one of the things I wanted to lift up was between what you both shared, like the different issues like housing, worker rights, worker justice, criminalization, the ways that just the different needs of communities of color, immigrant communities, and that part of what we're trying to build with a solidarity economy is a way of meeting the needs of a community by the community. And so really helpful to hear about who your community is and what kind of challenges and experiences they're having that we can, and also what strengths we're building off of. So the next question was, what are your goals for being part of this participatory action research program that BCI is hosting this summer? You could talk about for yourself personally, if there's areas you want to grow or develop, and then also for your own, I've been saying city, but I also realized that BCI is talking about the whole DMV area, so your local ecosystem. And maybe I'll pass it to Toya to go first on that one, and then back to you, Askalu.
Sure.
So doing organizing for 13 years, one of the things I learned is that in order to be successful, you got to know the people, not only love the people, but know the people and know what the people needs are. And I think knowing the people needs to kind of take time, and it take some deep dives into understanding like what everybody day to day look like, who do they care about, and all these things. And there's been a couple of instances where, you know, I've done the work to try to go out and do that, but I'm learning that take time and that take a lot of practice. And what I'm learning is that in this participatory action research practice and learning, that there's a lot of skills that can be learned. There's also a lot of skills that could be sharpened. And there's also, I'm really appreciating the process in which that we are relearning or reintroducing ourselves to do research, or reimagining what research could look like, which feels like an opportunity to not only learn how to do it and sharpen the skills for myself, but also learn how to add that, learn how to be able to facilitate and teach other people to do those things as well. So one goal is like learning and teaching. Another goal is that I get to go out with a new set of skills, a new set of sharpened skills to kind of learn what the community need. I think I'm really personally interested in taking a really deep dive into understanding what people need, because I work with the hustle economy. So these are folks who like taking what they have and going out to get what they need, right? So what they have may not be quote unquote legal, but what they have is like skills and a whole bunch of brilliance to do things, whether it's culinary, health and beauty, art, being musicians, and all these other things are just seriously like a strictly hustle. Somebody that know how to fill up a cooler of waters of beers and go hit the corner and make a couple of dollars to pay bills, and our Black women who have the skill to cook meals to help pay light bills, to help put money on books for our folks who get locked up and incarcerated in this criminal justice system, right? So learning what they need to like keep that going and keep that strong. And if they're trying to navigate figuring out how to quote unquote legitimize it, how do we navigate that? What are the advocacies that we could build to strengthen the ability to navigate that? Because one of the deeper learnings that I'm learning in Project Hustle is that the city don't really want people to kind of legalize their hustles. It's very hard. It's very hard to navigate the system to get licenses and permits to be legit on the streets, right? And it's also very hard, like to, you know, even the things that was once legal and that I've seen a lot of people get locked up and go to jail to do. There's a lot of people coming to New Orleans, white people who are able to do those same turn those same things that were criminalized into businesses, and particularly the marijuana industry. Being able to tap into that industry is hard. You have to have a lot of privilege and a lot of wealth to tap into those industries. So learning and understanding those things and trying to build those spaces for people is something that I have a deep interest in. And also learning, the last goal, I'm sorry if I'm going over time, is learning the alignments that exist across space. Like learning the alignment between DC and New Orleans would be beautiful for me. I have an affinity for Maryland in particular, Baltimore in particular, you know, and I know that there's a lot of alignment that exists in the movement world, specifically the Black movement world in Maryland and the Black movement world in New Orleans, that I've been like interested in and intrigued by. So that's the last goal.
Absolutely.
Okay, from this program, what I learned and then what I want for future is that I learn a lot of things, because the more you start practicing and then learning things, you would like to get more to share with your community. What I learned is that our people can start their own business. We can help them know there is an opportunity to do. And then, as Toya said, it's not only loving our pupils, it's knowing our people. So since I start training with BCI, I learned how to know my people. What do they need? How to help them? So, for example, the other day, Felice gave my phone number for, they call it National Domestic Workers Alliance. They work with the people who are underpaid home care workers. So the lady called me and asked me if I know anybody who works in our community, and then to get to know them. So when I start talking to people, I see how many our people are getting underpaid because they are working as with agencies, not direct with the people or that. So there is a lot of things to teach our pupils and then share ideas, and then most importantly being standing our feet for based on our the economies. We I think they call it extruded workers for here in DC. So we are trying to reach everybody, and then for future, for me, even for me, I learned that I can be standing in, I work in the hotel, so I can move on and then start my own business and then show my people that we can do it, and then there is an opportunity. That's what I learned from BCI, and then that's my goal, to reach our pupils and then get our economy, the same economies as other pupils.
All right, thank you. So last question that I had was just what is, I think it's really kind of a vision question around what would a solidarity economy look like in your city and where you live? And how do you see this work building toward that?
Can I go?
Yeah,
Or-
sure.
Okay. When I see the solidarity economics in our city, is that most of those things are held in. I don't see our community are participating in that kind of situations, because as I told you, most of us are working as essential workers, so we're not free. If I get fired today from my position from the hotel, until I find, I will have some issues to survive, and then I don't have anything to pay for my rent or all for my bills. So it's good to know, and then have an opportunity how to build your own things to get to live better lives, and then help peoples to know how we have the opportunity to be able to grow up, but we don't have the resources how to do it. So that's what BCI is trying to find out, and then doing the co-ops. So when I see the future is, we have a big and then good things are going on in BCI when we're doing these things. So I will pass it to my people, and then same thing for myself.
Okay. Personally, every day I sit with the question of how do I help to build the space to take the brilliance of the Black women who do supper plates, the Black people who make jewelry, or the Black people who drill a barbecue grill to the back of their trucks and go sit on St. Claus Street on the weekend. How do I build a space for them to have a zone, no criminalizing zone or something like that, to kind of like be and exist and make those things, and build consistency and intentionality within them being able to like make livings off, like the whole reason they do it is that they're trying to make a living. They're trying to take care of themselves and the people that they care about, right? How is that space built? So the solidarity economy look like that space being built, and then the this world of the cultural state does not cross the line to come and like mess with folks as they do this and they build this space, right? What does hustle villages look like? Like, how do we build these villages where people can come and get their hustle on, do their informal work or whatever we want to call it? Yeah, how are people able to do that? And how are we able to get beyond building, making a living? How do we get people to build wealth, and generational wealth and generational knowledge on how to do these things and do this work? A solidarity economy look like that to me. Like the policies in the city around us actually prioritizing that for people instead of prioritizing the criminalization and incarcerating folks. Yeah, that's all I got on that one.
Thank you. I think, yeah, this has been really great to think about the alignment between both cities, the kind of the translocal movement building that we're trying to do. And then at the end of the day, the communities, the needs of the communities are similar and also like specific, right? And so I think that's part of the learning that I'm excited for us all to have around this project. So what we'll do now is thank you, Askalu and Toya, for sharing all of those things. I think we'll go into talking a little bit about the fundraising piece and what's needed for the project. And then we'll have a little bit of time to do questions and answers and get to hear from other folks that are here. Any questions for you all or for the organizations around how this project will go and what we hope to learn and what the collaboration looks like. So I'm going to turn it over to Jeff to talk from BCI to talk a little bit more about the fundraising piece.
Yes, thank you so much. So I'm going to bump here again in the chat our Give Butter fundraising link. And really, we're all small grassroots organizations. This is a labor of love. We're trying to build power with poor and working class communities of color in the areas where we organize. So we need to resource the work. So we want to just share explicitly with everybody, none of this is magic. We are trying to redistribute resources, make sure that everybody is paid well for the work we're all doing. So we're here with a plug, asking for you all to help us fundraise to do this project and to do this collaboration between Co-op NOLA, BCI, and to help us fundraise along the way. So just want to give the quick plug for that piece, and really excited to be here with everybody and to be able to hear from Toya and from Askalu sharing your wisdom.
Great. So yeah, so and in that link you can see a little more, just a little bit of the story around, who's doing what and who's going and what we're planning to do as far as bringing these participatory action research practices to New Orleans and thinking about how we can use that in our base building here, and just doing more of that like relationship building and weaving those relationships between our two organizations. And as I think one of the things that I do want to lift up is just seeing what was in the chat and hearing from the panelists how much alignment there is around like our approach and our vision. And I think, we haven't deeply collaborated before this project, but that, like the language around excluded workers or, I think there's just a lot of resonance with like our mission, our vision, our values, and how we think about our work between these two organizations, which is very exciting to be tapping into. So I'm going to open it up for questions and comments from folks that are here. Many of you are deeply connected to our work in different ways. And yeah, would love to know what you're noticing, what you're excited about, or if you have any questions for for the panelists or anybody in the organizations. And Susan, actually, I know you were monitoring the chat. Did any questions come up in the chat that you want to lift up?
I did see that Tamara was saying that she could share a little bit about some other alignments that she sees between Louisiana and the DMV Baltimore region. So I wanted to see maybe if Tamara, if you had time to share a little bit about that.
Sure. Briefly, they're both in areas considered in the United States have been considered chocolate cities. New Orleans, DC definitely, and Baltimore in a way that's kind of they weren't necessarily majority Black the way DC and New Orleans are and have been, but much like Philadelphia, people assume they are, even though they're really not, because there's such a strong culture there that's been developed. But even more broadly and historically, Baltimore specifically and much of Maryland was founded by Catholic people in the way that Louisiana was. Most people don't know also that when the Acadians were run out of Canada by the English who took over from the French and said, you can no longer be Catholic, so convert to Protestantism or we'll kill you. And they ran away. Most people know they came to Louisiana. They also went to Baltimore. Many went to Baltimore because it was closer. But they basically blended into Baltimore and the city of Baltimore and didn't have the kind of separate Cajun culture that we have, because Louisiana just gave them a whole vast Western area and they settled among themselves and created their own thing there. Those who went to Baltimore blended in with the people there and kind of just turned into the rest of Baltimore. So those are just some surface level similarities that have led into other things that I think show themselves today.
Thanks so much, Tamara. Hope that got folks' juices flowing. So I'm going to do the awkward pause of what questions and comments folks have.
I have a question for Askalu. I wonder, with your community that you all have kind of worked together, especially during COVID, to support one another, has it been primarily the community of African immigrants, or have those groups joined with other immigrant groups to support each other, either within your region or like across regions in other areas?
During COVID, we when they are giving the grocery cards, we have some community too, Spanish community, and then the same thing when we're doing the tenants for those people who are being they try to evacuate them from the building. We had a lot of communities, but most of them are immigrant, and then most of them are we were partnering with Spanish peoples. So even if we're being called African community together, but we are working most of the time with other community too.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
For that question. Leila, I'm wondering if you want to say something that what you're saying on the chat out loud.
No, but I can. I actually can read it.
Okay.
I'm just. I think it a lot. No, there's so much around. I'll read the comment. I love the conversation of how of this legitimizing that Toya shared, and who has the power to do that to legitimize in our traditional economies. It also makes me think about Jessica Gordon Nemhard. For folks who don't know, Jessica Gordon Nemhard is the author of Collective Courage, and they share just like a really extensive history of African American cooperative practices and movement building, and includes really shouts out Ella Baker and the Council of Young Leaders. And there was like a big Ella Baker's approach to grassroots organizing. It just felt like there was so much like fighting for our rights and fashioning alternative economies just go hand in hand, to be able to empower ourselves to move in the ways that we need to as a people, asks us to fashion our own economies outside of the traditional economies that are legitimizing, or delegitimizing certain people over others.
Thanks so much, Leila.
And
Just so
Leila,
folks-
I'm grateful that you brought Jessica Nemhard into the space, knowing how much of an influence that Collective Courage was to the kind of some of the framing behind the Black Liberation Co-op Academy. And also just one of the pieces that she raises throughout Collective Courage and in her research is the ways that so often cooperative economies kind of surfaced out of different movement spaces, whether it was, coming out of the Reconstruction area and people organizing to meet their needs, or the rise of Jim Crow, and then civil rights organizing. And I think one of the, and then like connections to labor organizing as well. And I think one of the pieces that I love about taking a participatory action research approach is that it and coming from a solidarity economy approach is it kind of allows people to enter in and into like the movement space as a whole and seek out opportunities for like where there is alignment and really building together, and not like you know, for a group like Cooperation New Orleans, like really wanting to not only be thinking about how do we build more worker co-ops, but really about how are we building the conditions in which cooperative endeavors of all kinds can thrive. And I feel like the solidarity economy framework always gives us that. It's like a slightly bigger umbrella under which to do our work. And so really excited to learn from like BCI and how they are kind of creating their larger community of who they're reaching out to, and like the different movement spaces that they, and like in, you know, economic justice spaces that they're moving into. And then to think in New Orleans, what is our like, where is our like larger network that we want to be having these conversations as well.
And I also just want to lift up LP's question in the chat about best ways to support. The fundraising link is definitely live. Please do share far and wide, spread it around. And I think the best way that folks can support our work from afar right now is really just amplifying everything we're doing. So I think starting with the fundraising link, and then we're doing research. We're going to be compiling all of the research into a report to share, to really like report back on what we found. We're going to be using all of this research in the DMV, the DC area, to really like set priorities moving forward for our organizing. So you'll see a lot from us that comes in sort of the coming months. I think around October is probably when we're going to publish the research. So be looking out for it then. And right now, Askalu and Toya and all of the researchers, we're working on building our research questions together. So it's an iterative project where we're building every piece together, and we're going to be sharing all of this with everybody as we learn more. And I think we'll learn a lot about like all the frames that everybody's sharing in the chat. Excluded workers, people who just need to organize out of necessity. Like we call this new labor sometimes, like workers in informal spaces that are not organized in the labor movement for whatever reason. So we're going to be learning a lot in the research of like what are like material connections that everybody with these different experiences in different communities, in different workplaces, like what are shared experiences that people are facing, shared challenges, and what are the opportunities that we can build together so that everybody can really be building power, safety, stability. So be on the lookout for that later in the year, and circulating that and getting the word out about that will be super helpful as well.
Thanks, Jeff. And I saw Nika came off mute, and then we'll take your comment, Nika, and then we'll move to wrap up. And just to actually maybe give a heads up to everybody that one of the things that we usually do in our meetings in Cooperation New Orleans to close is get to hear from everybody about how this was for you. So I will just a heads up especially for those off camera, that we will love to hear from you, whether it's in the chat or verbally, about what you're taking away from this call. So over to you, Nika.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I think what came up for me was just like obviously excitement about all the rich relationships that are going to be built in this process. And then a question around like, how do y'all foresee like maintaining these relationships going forward, like keeping folks in the fold, building trust so people feel, you know, empowered to kind of engage more in the solidarity economy ecosystem. And then if there's kind of a desire vision to then repeat that process here in New Orleans.
It's a great question. I'm wondering, do you want to take that, Bianca? I could also speak to it. We talk a lot about the momentum that outreach produces, and then how we want to harness that.
Yeah, why don't you go first and I'll follow up.
Cool. So outreach generates tons of momentum. Really, we're organizing all of our work to be ready as ready as we can to really like receive the interest and to focus it in different ways. So what I would say, and I'll pass to you in a second, Bianca, is just we're really focused on lifting up a collective economic project that comes out of this research. So that could, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like. That could look like across the co-ops that are part of the network that we organize in at BCI. It could be like a shared sick day program, ways for co-ops to buy insurance together that is just really difficult to do individually as small businesses. It could be something like that. Could be like shared saving funds. We're really interested in like lifting up probably more over time in the coming years, like local policy campaigns to fight for. Could be things that just like opening up just transition money for co-ops. Could be fighting for like a city-owned bank. Could be like more granular ways to engage with the existing like regulatory and executive infrastructure that exists in different cities, but really moving resources to co-ops in the solidarity economy. And otherwise, we focus our work on incubating new cooperatives that are led by poor and working class workers of color. We do lots of technical assistance to existing cooperatives, do work to support businesses that are not cooperatives to convert to cooperatives. And we also operate the loan fund, the DC Solidarity Economy Loan Fund, so do non-extractive lending. So really, we're the way we relate to people, we're going to try to offer if people want to be in relationship with us in all these ways.
Yeah, just what Jeff said about how outreach and relationship building creates a lot of momentum. And I think he did a good job discussing the ways we hope to keep people connected. And just something I want to say in the follow-up is like, I'm hopeful that we can also go to New Orleans at some point, because I think particularly our work with informal economy workers is very connected. We did a big campaign last year to decriminalize street vending and create a vending zone as part of that legislation. So I think we're continuously learning, like, what does that look like after a decriminalization fight? And I think we also have like lots to share and collaborate with around like connecting with informal economy workers as they come into cooperatives. So I think there's just lots of opportunities to continue to strengthen relationships sort of across cities, and then like hold the work and the momentum that's created by this. And what I will say is I think there's going to be a lot of momentum because all of us, I think, know that the economy is not working. And we all know our communities are being extracted from. And I think all feeling the pressure of that, even if we're not feeling that pressure equally. So I think we focus a lot also on unlikely relationships. So if our center is poor and working class workers of color, how do we also like have specific ways for folks with generational wealth or people with more access to resources to participate in that, and not in a transactional way, but in a relationship based way? That's what I want.
I do want to just lift up, and I know, Nika, you were the one that asked the question, but since you're part of Cooperation Gumbo, I think that project is a place where some of these tools might be applicable. And I'm wondering if you had any thoughts on that you want to share before we move to close.
I mean, yeah, I think I'm excited about just like this frame of like the participatory action research as a way of just like being like this two-way kind of communication channel between like folks, just like for us to learn like what our needs, what are ways that we could support workers in our city, and then also for us to be able to just kind of share and kind of highlight the work that's happening and like what's possible, and share kind of stories. And so, yeah, that feels like very aligned in terms of like the Cooperation Gumbo like mission. So yeah, definitely exciting.
And I can just add that Cooperation Gumbo is a research project that we're doing that's sort of like a creative intervention that's looking into lifting out stories of Black and Indigenous cooperative practices in neighborhoods around the city. And it's sort of been a lot of like looking back and like remembering. And I think what the participatory action research kind of also brings in, and we would have to think about this and learn from Toya and Maya after they've gone out and done the experience in DC, is how we can also be having a line of development of that project that's sort of also forward thinking, and like where do you see, how do we re-engage in those cooperative practices? So really excited for that. And also feel like there's a real piece of this that Cooperation New Orleans has been dancing around, like how do we engage in advocacy and policy, and with our capacity and like with our understanding of the city. And I'm really excited to think about how this work helps give us, and like the actual conversations help to give us that direction rather than us trying to identify it ourselves.
So I'm
Yeah,
gonna
if I
move us to, oh, sorry.
So just like real quick, because what Susan made me think, it was just like, yeah, I think really excited about this like narrative creation that's also happening within Cooperation Gumbo, like remembering the past, having conversations with the current and then the future, because I find it really powerful when I can see myself within this like bigger movement, and like being able to offer that. It seems really cool.
Thanks so much, Nika. So I misjudged the time, but I think it'd be great if folks could put in the chat and or come off mute. I would love to hear some people come off mute, but I wish, actually, what we'll do is actually just do one word go around. If you can, if you need to jump off, feel free to put it in the chat. But what I'll do is say a word that's sticking out to you about today and then pass it to the next person. So my word will be alignment, and I'll pass it to Willa.
Shared learning. Toya.
Intention. Tamara.
Encouraged, Jeff.
Power building, Willa.
I went, but I'll pass it to Bianca.
I'm inspired. LP.
Support.
Leela.
I'm also encouraged as Tamara, and I'll pass it to Aski.
Power. We'll pass it to LP. I'm not sure.
I'm gonna lift up Latierra's word in the chat, expanding, and Julie with creativity. And Susan, did you go?
No, but I'm thinking, I'm always thinking about like mushroom rhizome networks.
Great word, Nika.
That was what I was gonna say, networks.
Oh, great. Thanks for going through that funny closing. Just, yeah, really a lot of appreciation for everyone on the call for your work, holding this webinar down and supporting the work of both organizations, sharing the link out with your communities. We'll share this recording out with the folks that couldn't be here. And just excited to continue to build the organizational relationship and all the relationships among all of us and those that we're connected to move this work forward. So have a great rest of your day, and feel free to come off mute and say bye.
Bye.
Thanks so much.
So,
Bye.
yeah.
Hasta
Bye.
pronto.
Bye, everyone.
Seeing beautiful
Thank
faces.
you.
Take care.
Happy birthday, Susan.
Thank you.
Oh,
Birthday.
Way to
it's your
spend it.
birthday.
It is. It's a great way to spend it.
And hey, Willa.